This video is sponsored by Alpha Draft, where you can play fantasy spots such as Dota 2. They have Star Series up there at the moment. You can play CSGO. They have CEVO, which is about to start today. Now then, the topic of female representation in casting, and when I say casting, really I mean the whole field of on-camera talent. So we also mean the interviewers, the stage host, the analysis desk. This is all bundled into casting, but it's a lot simpler for the sake of having a short title to just say female representation in casting. Now this is a topic which is kind of a pertinent one right now for two key reasons. And it actually covers two different games. Unknowingly, I think people from different games don't realize at the moment, same discussion is going on. So the talent lineup for the Frankfurt Major, for Dota 2, the first proper major to go along with the international, etc., has no women on it. Despite there being 22 slots, they were all taken up in the end by men. Now, secondly, on CSGO desks, for the majors and for ESL desks, where they have a female caster that they often use, you'll often hear this discussion happening. Should there be, like for example, at the last major, I don't know how many slots we had for the major, but there was no women in there, as analysts, casters, interviewers, or stage hosts. So a few people made some comments, and now for this next tournament, ESL, I think it was IEM San Jose rather, in the ESL event, there was Pansy there, who's an ESL caster, so it's understandable why they hire her and why she's already part of the events, because they use their own in-house casters anyway. And so the discussion came up like, should she be on the desk? And then always a corollary discussion that goes along with that is she only hired because she's a woman? Is she good enough? You know, is it just because she's, all these secondary topics always spring up out of it. So in general, I think as a topic, it not only addresses casting and analysis desks and on-camera talent, but it also has key connection points to the topic in general of women in gaming and what is their role and should things be done. And so I think that's why the water always gets muddied, because people take a specific point made about something like someone being hired or not hired for this one specific desk, and they draw it out into the general topic of hiring them in general. Then they draw it out into the even more abstract general topic of should people do certain things in terms of policies implemented within society to encourage certain minority groups, and so on, which once you get to that level there, you're not even discussing the original point yet. People disingenuously get involved in the original discussion as if it was to do with this, or even worse, paint one specific topic discussion up here as being a direct implication towards the more general broad topic, sometimes entirely unfairly and not even with any logic associated with it. So let's talk first of all about the concept of hiring people for doing these desks, or being casters, or being stage interviewers, or being hosts. I mean, first and foremost, I think it's pretty clear to me, my opinion is, it seems like the best approach to hire the best talent possible, or to put it a different way, the right talent for the desk. And what I mean by that is, obviously, someone could actually be very good. To give number example, okay, let's say you had 5 spots for an analysis desk. That's my world, so I'll talk about that. Let's say you had 5 spots for the desk. I mean, it's not many desks have that many players, but we'll do it for the sake of the argument. So let's say you had 5 spots for the analysis desk, and we're ignoring the hosts, etc. These are all analysts, 5 analysts. In theory, there might be a case where you have the 5 best analysts in the world, each in isolation. You'd put them in a list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But there might be a situation where, say, number 4, the 4th best, doesn't tend to have very good synergy with the number 1 and number 2 analysts, and his points often tend to be quite similar, or his way of analysing the games may be in a similar vein to one of theirs. And so just for the sake of having a more interesting discussion, or having better synergy between the people, or making the desk having the right desk in that sense, having a more effective, more entertaining, more interesting desk, there might be a time when you exclude one of these people, such as the 4th best guy, for say the 7th best guy, on the basis that 7th best guy does the analysis a little bit differently, he fits in better with some of those people, his synergy is going to be a bit better. And so in that scenario, it's obviously not purely just based on talent. There's other considerations there. But in general, that's not going to be the case. And in general, you are going to try to pick, I would propose, the best people to go on the desk. And the people have the most talent, they've crafted themselves the best, they've got the most ability, their performance level is going to be very good. Notice I didn't say it should men who do that. I didn't say women who should do that. I didn't say people of specific gender. I just said the best people who can do that. That's the people, my philosophy is that you should hire for these events. Now then, if a woman happens to be someone who's good enough and has crafted a quality of her stuff, and she'd bring something right to the desk and it would make up for the right desk, obviously she should be hired. It makes absolute sense to it. Fits in with that criteria. I've never argued otherwise. I don't know anyone involved in this discussion who's making serious points, who's arguing against that. Yet you'll notice a lot of the people who are directly arguing from the opposing side, it's not really even a side, just from a different side, namely a kind of third wave radical feminist point of view, those people are actually taking the original points of people like me and trying to draw a direct line between, or even just state that you are saying that women shouldn't be hired in this particular sense, and that you want it to be all men, which is not in any way what anyone like me said. And I don't have to justify what I've said. I don't have to explain it. I'm explaining for the sake of this video to set the scene of the discussion, because you need to understand the context of where they're coming from and how far it is from the original points made, because then you might maybe ask yourself, that's a bit weird. Why would they be so far away from the points originally made in terms of how they represented it? Because they have an agenda at work here. Now then, that's part of the problem with these discussions. People will very rarely argue the actual point. I mean, it happens in debates in general. When someone doesn't want to argue the point, they draw away from the point and make it a more generalized point, or take the argument somewhere else where they feel like they have safe ground or higher ground and they want to take the battle there. The reason why these debates get muddied is because it always comes into like a sexism issue, or you're trying to paint someone else's, it's an issue with their gender that you don't want them on the desk, or it's never about their skill, their talent, and their merits for why they deserve to be on the desk, why they should be on the desk, why it would be the right decision to put them on the desk, why it would make for the best desk. Would it be more entertaining? Would they be more skilled? Would they provide some special synergy? These, by the way, would be great grounds if you really believe there are specific women who should be hired to these desks, and you see a desk without them. Those are the grounds you should go on. Don't go on the fact they're a woman. Go, this person, don't even bring up the fact they're a woman. I mean, it's going to be obvious by the pronouns you use. Just say, I think this person should have been hired for the desk because you know what? They're actually quite funny and entertaining, I think more so than some of these people. And you know what? I think they'd synergize with these people better. I've seen them working other events, and they've got really good game knowledge. I think that would be interesting. That's how you could have a real debate about it. What's funny is the people themselves who are arguing against this stuff not only are rarely bringing up names, which is something I'll get into, but also they themselves are arguing on the basis of gender. They're not making it about some sort of egalitarian thing where we're trying to hire the best people, and that means having women if they're good enough. No, they're not trying to do that. They've got their own set agenda. It has to be women, and on the basis they're women first and foremost. All other qualities, which to me are primary qualities of a cast or on-camera talent, like actual ability, performance level, knowledge of the game, synergy with other people, like general technical skills on camera, etc., experience. These are all primary qualities. They're making those secondary qualities. The primary quality is, what is the person's gender? Or rather than that, that's not even fair. It's not even what is the person's gender. It's, is the person female? It's literally a binary thing. If they're female, yes, then we should consider having them on desk. Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you could argue the merits of that. But then again, they're not arguing the merits of it, are they? So you'll notice that the reason I say these discussions get drawn away into that very murky territory, which is full of lots of secondary bullshit and rhetoric from other gender politics that have nothing to do with esports or talent desks and the specifics of hiring for those. The reason I bring that up is because you'll notice in the vast majority of instances, at least that I've seen, that people have these debates and draw it into those areas. What they do is refuse to give specifics on who they want hired and who they want removed, despite wasting all this time arguing over this topic, making it an incredibly abstract topic, bring up other things, tweet after tweet after tweet, Reddit post after Reddit post after Reddit post, blogs, whatever it might be. They'll never nail down any specifics, despite the fact that's the first place you would go to. If it was about a topic that these 22 people have been hired, I think someone else should be hired. What would the first question be? Who do you think it is? I think this person. And who should they replace? I think this person. They don't do either of those two things. Even when people ask them, they keep it in this abstract area so they never can be pinned down on any issue. And they never actually have to debate the merits of the person as a caster. They just make it about women. But women in general. Well, we're not hiring women, mate. We're hiring good casters or good on-camera talent. So once you show us one, then let's debate their on-camera talent and ability and all the rest of it. Not the fact that they're a woman or not, or the fact that another person's a man, therefore we're going to remove him. That's one of the problems, because once you get into the area where you specify who should be hired, you're going to have to specify who shouldn't be hired, because you're going to have to remove a name to put a name in. Fairly simple, right? It's a limited amount of spots. So as soon as you do that, now we can have an even more interesting discussion. Why? If you're not going to argue the merits of this person as a caster, then you might not actually think this, but you're almost presenting it as though they don't have the merits just to be employed as a caster. If they do, you don't need to bring up the gender. So say you don't bring up their points as a caster, then you're almost suggesting this person, who has a lot of great merits going for them as a caster, should be removed. Why? He's a man. Okay, so why am I removing him? To put this person in his place. But why is she put in his place? She's a woman. Okay, is she as good a caster? We're not going to have that debate. We need women and diversity, and wouldn't it be great for the youth and all the rest of it? See, that's a very dangerous area to get into there, because guess what? That's sexist. You're discriminating in favour of someone for their gender and against someone for their gender. What's funny is that's the way these people are presenting us and people who are talking about having great casting desks that just don't happen to have any women on, because in this particular case, it's our conclusion that the people they've hired are the right people, and just so happens the women they didn't hire maybe weren't the right people to be in those positions, which is a debate you can have, but they've made it into a gender issue where actually they're the ones who are being sexist in this particular scenario. Now, what's funny is, the reason why I say argue the merits is because if I looked at the Dota, to give the Dota 2 example for you, okay, on the Dota 2 desk, the first thing I thought wasn't, oh, this woman hasn't been hired, or there are no women here. First thing I thought was, oh, that's interesting, they didn't hire that Winter guy. When I've seen him on desks, his analysis is pretty good. He comes from kind of a unique perspective. He has insight into some of the Asian teams that some of the Westerners don't have. I immediately thought he should maybe be hired. Reason why, his talents, his specific experience, what he brings to desk, synergy with other people. And then I thought to myself, in my own head, who would I take out for that? And I tried to have the debate over it. And there was maybe one or two people I might have considered. But even so, it's not the end of the world that he didn't get hired. And I just thought, interesting. I would have probably gone with that route instead. Now, what's funny there is, most of these people who are arguing about analyst desks, they're so eager to get a woman in, they haven't even gotten to that one. So they're already discriminating against someone like Winter, for example, because we're so busy to take out another name to put a woman in that even he who hasn't got in, we can make the case maybe should have, he's not going to get on either. There's no space for him. We're filling up the desk for fucking women now, whether or not they're good enough or not, apparently, in these people's abstract world. Now, if you want to talk about specific women, there are two great examples in Dota 2 and CSGO. So in Dota 2, there's Shiva, and in CSGO, there's Pansy. Now, Shiva in Dota 2, I'm not an expert about Dota 2, the game. I don't watch every tournament, but I've watched a lot of the big finals and big semi-finals and decently large tournaments. From what I've seen, yeah, she seems pretty decent. As a caster, I had my qualms with it. I didn't think she was that good in general. Some of the stuff she said seemed a bit off. As an interviewer, I thought some of those were good. There aren't actually that many interviews in the scene of any gender. She seemed like one of the better ones in general. She had good synergy with certain players she clearly knew. That all seemed good. In terms of as a stage host, I think I've seen times where she looked a little nervous, but she could probably do it. I could certainly see making a case for her to be hired for this major as one of the 22 people, assuming it's the right 22, not just putting her in a specific spot just for the sake of her being a woman. Now, if you want to notice, I argued her merits as an interviewer or as a caster. In these scenarios, yeah, we could make a case, and I don't think it would be the end of the world if she had been hired. Likewise, I don't think it is the end of the world if she hasn't been hired. I don't think just because she's female, she should be hired over someone else if we can't make a merit-based argument that she's better than them or the right person than them rather than them for this particular sort of a desk or talent setup or this job. If we can do so, her gender's actually irrelevant, which is the original point. Because the original tweet I made was something along the lines of, like, I guess desks for majors should be made up of like equal representation. I can't remember the specific tweet. Equal representation of all genders and races and that sort of thing, because it's obviously a ludicrous point if you put it like that. But what's funny is people took that as sexist and that as racist and used that in that particular scenario. So you can see how disingenuous the people making their arguments are in this particular case. Now, there's also the issue that we're now getting into this area of like general gender politics bullshit, which has invaded gaming anyway, but is in rampant in the Western world, unfortunately, intellectual thought anyway, which comes down to the idea of like token hires. Like, we're going to hire this person. Why? Just because she's a woman? Well, why would we do that? Is she good enough to have the job? Oh no, but we're going to hire her because she's a woman. Yeah, but what possible reason could you have for that? Aside from you are sexist and you discriminate in favour of women and against men. Well, no, I don't do that. The reason I'm hiring this woman is to inspire other women and to represent women. Right? First of all, what do you mean represent women? I mean, within your argument itself is this implicit implication that there aren't enough women in esports and gaming. Therefore, because there aren't enough women in esports, there aren't enough, because remember, it's a very small niche cross-section that are trying to become casters. And because there aren't enough that are even trying to become casters, among those, there aren't enough at the moment that are good enough to be hired for some of these positions purely on the basis of how good they are. Therefore, since there's barely any women in this particular scenario, especially once you make the curve down to such a narrow filter like that, who are they representing? If anything, the fact that they're not there does represent them, because it would be like, 0.00001% of people who are trying to be female casters in Dota 2 or CSGO. I mean, wouldn't that be a scenario? Just remember that. Let me just go back in time quickly. I forgot the Pansy one. I said the Shiva one, I didn't say the Pansy one. Again, Pansy, serviceable caster. I don't mind her being on any events pretty much. have her do some group stage games, try to find what they haven't done at the moment is try to find a good combo with her. They haven't found the right colour guy to go with her. They've out there found, said guy there. There's actually no female colour commentators, by the way. If you found the right combo to go, maybe that would help. Again, I don't have an issue with it. I just think there are a number of times, such as the last major, where I could make a merit-based case that someone else should be hired over her, not because they're a man, not because she's a woman, because they're better than her. So there's that one out the window. But anyway, going back to this topic. Again, who are they representing? Why would you unfairly represent an extreme minority who don't have anyone in there who's good enough to be hired on the basis that you're going to represent? What is this? It's not the United Colours of Benetton, you know. It's a fucking on-camera analysis desk that's supposed to provide analysis, entertainment, and do a good job for the camera. It's got nothing to do with representing all races and genders and or whatever. Again, who are they going to inspire? Now, people can give anecdotes. And they can say, oh, well, I'm a woman, and when I saw this woman do this, I was inspired to believe I could do it as well. Okay, that's all well and good. You do realise how incredibly subjective that is. It's also ridiculous to imagine that an objective concept. So women, in general, when they see another woman do something, go, well, that inspires me. I could do that as well. Well, why does it? I mean, it seems rather condescending to me to imply that women need to see women succeeding for they themselves to look and go, that inspires me. I could do that as well. See, I give women more credit than that, at least the ones that I know. I imagine they look at a field and they see something that they want to do and they see someone else doing it of any gender or race and they go, that's so cool. I'd like to do that. I'm inspired. I want to try and get better and I want to be in a position where one day I could do that. Gender is irrelevant to this particular topic. Also, there's the fact that in that sort of a scenario where you're bringing gender into it, your own premise doesn't work. Because remember, you're going to hire someone discriminatorily on the basis they are a woman, even though they don't deserve it on the basis of talent and merit. You're going to put them on a desk to inspire more women because we don't have enough women to give them, remember the scenario, follow it through. So you're going to put them on the desk. Then a woman's going to watch and go, wow. And if she knows all the details, here's what she'd have to say. Wow, a woman has been hired purely on the basis that she's a woman, even though she isn't actually good enough or deserving of being on this desk. That inspires me that I could also, ready, be hired one day on the basis that I'm a woman, not that I'm not good enough. Because if anything, surely the woman who would be inspired should be sat at home watching and going, oh, look, this talent desk has all men on it. I mean, I don't know why she'd be thinking that way. You are trapped in a fucked worldview if that's the way you think of things in terms of gender yourself. Should be watching, ideally, and going, look at all these people on this analysis desk who have a lot of talent and are really good at analysis. You know what? I'd love to be an analyst one day. So I'm going to work really hard and try and make it happen. And even if there was someone trapped in a gender worldview reality tunnel, hopefully they'd even then think, you know what, there's no women on here. Maybe that's because at the moment there aren't any women who'd be the right fit for this desk. I'd like to be a caster one day. I'm going to work really hard and see if I can become the first one to be in a position where I could be hired, even though at the moment no women are being hired, just because I'm good enough. Wouldn't that be a great thing? It would be a great thing if you could do that. That would be a wonderful thing, irrespective of gender. Then there's also the fact that this sort of logic, if we extrapolate it, applies beyond women. So we can apply it beyond the gender of men and women to transgender people. We can apply it to all races of people. By the same logic, why wasn't everyone saying, there's no Jamaican guy. I mean, that's not a race, but you can see where I'm going with that. There's no Jamaican guy hired for that desk. I mean, obviously, there's not barely any Jamaican people trying to be casters, and so as a result, we wouldn't just put a caster on there who's Jamaican and go, well, putting a Jamaican caster on there will inspire other Jamaican people to believe that they could get involved in these sports and they could be a caster too. You know why? Because once we extrapolate beyond this one thing of getting one woman hired, like these people disingenuously want, now suddenly we've ruined the whole casting desk, because now we can only have X amount of men and X amount of women and then X amount of transgender people. Then we have to have like Jamaicans and South Africans and Australians and Americans and Brits. And I better have the Irish, can't just have Brits only. And what a nightmare desk this would be. Again, you'd have ruined all the quality and all the merits of hiring people and having a good desk, what makes up a good desk, for the pure purpose of political correctness, which isn't even political correctness, by the way, it's a totally abused term, and ridiculous gender politics that have no place in gaming in this context. In other contexts, sure, we can make those debates. So what, shouldn't we inspire Jamaican people? Shouldn't we inspire transgender people? Shouldn't we just hire a transgender person, even if they're not good enough at the actual casting and on camera talent, on the basis that if we do, it might inspire other transgender people who, in your world, have to condescendingly see transgender people do things to be inspired themselves to come on the desks? I don't see anyone making that case. It's the exact same argument, and I can apply it over and over and over and over and over again. So, okay, let me ask you this question. In an ideal world, would each desk have a black person on it, have a gay person on it, have a female on it, have a transgender on it, have some Chinese people on it? Would it have all these things? In an ideal world, in the dream world, the utopia we could create, would it have all those things? My answer? No. Wouldn't have that makeup. You know why? In an ideal world, the desk would be made up of the best team of people to cast and analyse that tournament. And some of them might be gay. Some of them might be black. Some of them might be Chinese. Some of them might be white. Some of them might be American. Whole point is, the labels wouldn't matter. They'd be hired for the best. So once those people are available, we'll hire the best teams. And you know what? If for some reason the game gets so big, or it turns out some certain people become so good, let's say there are like 8 absolutely incredible African-American black colour commentators. Now, you can't hire 8, obviously. But let's say there's 4 slots for colour commentators. If there were 4 black guys there, because they were all brilliant like this and had the merits too, and you could argue the merits over guys who happened to be white, and you weren't even arguing the gender, you're just arguing the merits. If there were 4 of them, I wouldn't then go, well, it's a shame there's not more white men representing the casters. And someone would be like, well, what do you mean? Who should I hire? Well, that's beside the point. I just think it would inspire more white people if there were. Now, what's great, by the way, is I already know people who are trapped into the sort of third-wave feminist mindset and gender politics of today are already interpreting all this video, by the way, as like, oh, and then he tried to imply that, like, white men could be a minority and he couldn't check his own privilege and put himself in a world where he isn't a man and with all these privileges. I mean, you've got to leave those people to do what they're going to do. You don't fan the flames by giving them any more fuel. They can think whatever they want. I'm arguing to people who actually like logic and reason and want to consider the merits of a topic and look into the nuances and how would that argument work over here if we transpose some of the details. So I think it's an interesting thought experiment to have. So to me, in an ideal world, the best desk is just the best group of people, and then the labels come after the fact. After you've hired the best people, you go, oh, it's interesting. It turns out we actually hired 2 women here, and there was 1 guy from over here. At the moment, that's not happening because there aren't the people in position to be like that. Although you can make fringe cases, like I said, you can certainly have debates over them. And that's entirely fine, by the way. You don't see me saying, like if someone says, I think Shiva should be on that desk, I don't go, oh, you just say that because she's a woman. No. That person makes his arguments for it. I can agree, I can disagree, I can make my own arguments, we can counter them. There's no need for me to call them sexist and all stuff when, first of all, I don't know if they are, and to dismiss their opinion like that. Yet that's exactly what happened. My original tweet, I told you, as inoffensive as it was taken exactly that way. It was painted as this sexist, ignorant comment where to think that I must be like living in the past, man, and I must be totally ignorant of all the problems that women have in life, as well as fucking anything to do with them being one woman being hired for this particular Dota 2 major. Get real. And everyone who took that perspective never offered specific counter-arguments. I want to hire this person for this reason, and you're wrong in that sense for this reason, and that isn't the way we want it represented for this reason. All they essentially did was fall back to positions of like, you're ignorant, you're sexist, and then the least inflammatory was, wouldn't it be nice if... Well, this isn't about would it be nice if, mate. It's about a specific case in the real, tangible world of someone being hired and you wanting someone else to be hired, but when someone asks, well, who is the specifics, you don't have a specific, you just want a specific gender represented on the desk. Now, that's kind of ridiculous. There was a Dota 2 player called Ake, who plays for Alliance, who actually won the International, TI3, so a couple of years ago, who made a blog on this exact topic. And a bunch of other prominent Dota Swedish people came forward with comments. Now, he made some comments in there which were, I mean, patently ludicrous in the application of my original tweet. He said that it was a kind of statement that had no thought at all associated with it. Oh, great. So because he disagrees with my opinion, which is that it would be ludicrous to suggest that we should have to make up all desks of all these different representations, then obviously I can't have put any thought into it, right? I mean, that's not condescending at all, is it? That if I think this way, well, I must not have actually thought it through, and I must not kind of know the arguments he knows, because if I did, I'd be able to only come to the one conclusion that he's come to, right? Gotta love the worldview that these people are trapped into, this binary thinking, and the way you can only be on their side and agree with them completely, or you're a total piece of shit who hates all women and is ignorant of everything and wishes we all lived in like Iran. I mean, that's like the kind of world these people actually occupy, it seems to me. Then he even said that my comments contributed nothing to the discussion except, and these are really his words, unreasonable hate. Now think about that original tweet that I just mentioned there. In fact, I'll go and look it up now so I can quote it word for word. Let's go have a look what it was. Okay. Because when you see it word for word, you'll realise how incredible that statement is. The idea that it's unreasonable hate. Let's see. Okay, here was the exact tweet. It's 21 hours ago. Clearly, all majors should have desks which represent every race and gender, because that's more important than having legit talent. I mean, seems fairly innocuous, almost something that you couldn't even argue against in many ways, but people make their arguments. Okay, that's fine. Now, he described that as unreasonable hate. Like, where's the hate? Who is the hate directed towards there? The hate, I mean, I don't even see any hate involved in it. It's a statement. Where's the hate involved in there? You see how these people paint things, though. Again, it's funny they don't argue the merits of these casters, because they don't even argue the merits of their own debate points. If they had merits to their debate points, and my debate points lacked merit in certain areas, they'd debate that. They don't. They just make it that. They label you as, oh, you're just a hater, and you're just this, and you're just that, and you're just that. Funny how they can make a lot of assumptions about other people, as long as they're white males. They make all these assumptions and talk about privilege, despite never considering their own privilege in this particular sense of their worldview. And you're just labelled as haters, whereas if they had all this great points on their side and all this righteousness, you'd stick to making the points. That's where you'd win the debate. You don't need to start name-calling people, but that's exactly what they do. So then you've got the issue that... Oh, by the way, just as a general side point, as an amusing side point to me personally in my life experience, I find it quite funny that so many people from the Swedish Dota scene said these comments. Because I tell you what, if you're someone who comes from the West, let's say from America or from Britain, and you're someone incredibly invested in gender politics and identity politics, and you believe in third wave feminism concepts of the patriarchy that exists, that dominates all areas of life, and even implicit within all of our language and the way we think about things and our worldviews is this sexism and this misogyny and this chauvinism towards men. If you really believe in all that, take a trip to Sweden. Go to some libraries, go to some political discussions, read what they say within their own discussions of gender politics, and you'll realise what an incredible fantasy, sci-fi-esque plot the concept of the patriarchy is. Because the way they present the patriarchy doesn't work in Sweden. Because Sweden is basically like, I mean, it's almost like a feminazi matrix where instead of agents you've got third wave feminists. They've won that battle in their country. They've taken over all of political aspects. They've managed to influence massively all the social aspects, where now many Swedish men, when you talk to them on this topic, they're totally bought into the notion that, yeah, I'm inherently sexist because I am a man and I have grown up as a white man in this particular world, and so I mean in many ways I can't know what rape is or any of these concepts of consent. So a lot of them, sadly, who on other topics, perfectly reasonable people, they're stuck in that worldview. So the idea that there's a patriarchy, where it ain't ruling in or having influence in Sweden in that respect, love. So go and check it out. It's interesting. There's also the fact that when you want to talk about unreasonable hate, it's something I find pretty hateful, pretty distasteful. The idea that you would take a talented man and because he's a man, deny him employment in a field he loves and is his passion, he's worked very hard to get good in, purely on the basis that a less talented, less applicable and reasonably arguable person to be hired, who happens to be a woman, is going to be given that job instead. Just to make up numbers, just to represent, just to inspire other women. I find that pretty hateful, pretty distasteful. What a disgusting concept that is. I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's just a stupid opinion, and it shouldn't really have a lot of influence on anything. But I think on the basis that a simple opinion could have any hate involved in it, that seems a little bit hateful. It seems like you maybe, in some way, you're self-hating if you're a man in that sense, if you believe it. It certainly seems like that could be the case. Again, though, this gender politics bullshit, ultimately, when you look at it, very rarely has to do with the topic at hand or even the bigger topic about gaming and stuff. What I tend to find with social justice warriors, third wave feminists, and people who are involved in gender politics arguing this way, as in they make a point, sometimes the point even has some validity to it, but they make the point, and then anyone who disagrees with that point, they paint them as sexist, ignorant, pieces of shit, the worst people ever. Because they go into such extremes like that, you realise that because it's about identity, it's about they are not what I am. And that's the key crime that the person's committed, that they are not what this person making the argument is. And that's the point they're trying to make to you. Ultimately, that sort of arguing is a kind of narcissism of morality. What they want to tell you and impress upon you is that you're nothing, you're a piece of shit, you're not even deserving to speak on these topics because you're not like them, someone who has this elevated, superior morality and better understanding of what's right and the way the world should be, and that's what they're trying to stress to you. So in the end, even though what sounds like they're debating abstractly about other people and other groups aside from them, but ultimately it all comes down to them and their superiority over you with this narcissistic morality that they're better than you because they believe these things, and if you don't, you're a piece of shit, essentially. So as a result, the debate always veers away from the original topic and the original points. In short, let me summarise the whole discussion here to what I think is a reasonable statement, but has been totally muddied into a load of bullshit by idiots. Hire people for analysis desks on the basis of ability and performance, not what kind of genitalia they have between their legs. Thanks to Alpha Draft for the 6 Skrilla.